Talk to yourself like this for just 3 days, and something inside you will begin to shift. Not magically, not overnight, but scientifically, emotionally, and spiritually. Because before the world teaches you anything, you teach yourself every single day through the language you use inside your own mind. We are educated in schools, trained in skills, corrected by society. But rarely are we taught how to speak to ourselves. And yet, the most influential voice in your life is not your teacher, not your parents, not your critics. It is your own. That voice never takes a break. It speaks when you wake up, when you fail, when you succeed, and when no one else is around to listen. For 3 days, speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you deeply care about. Not with flattery, not with lies, but with truth wrapped in compassion. When you make a mistake, do not insult yourself. Educate yourself. Say, I am learning. Because learning is not the absence of failure. It is the correct interpretation of it. Your brain listens to repetition, not motivation. Neuroscience tells us that repeated thoughts strengthen neural pathways. So when you repeatedly say, I am not enough, your brain believes it as data. But when for 3 days you say, I am struggling, but I am capable, your brain begins to search for evidence to support that belief. Education starts there, where thought becomes instruction. Pain does not make you weak, but the way you talk to yourself in pain can either deepen the wound or begin the healing. When life breaks you, and it will, do not say, I am broken. Say, I am still here. Survival itself is a qualification. Every breath you take is proof that you have not given up, even on days when you feel like you have. For 3 days, replace self-judgment with self-guidance. Instead of asking, what is wrong with me, ask, what is this teaching me? This is not positivity, this is emotional intelligence. This is how resilient people are educated. Not by avoiding pain, but by translating it into wisdom. Speak to yourself with respect, because self-respect is not built in public, it is built in private conversations. When you tell yourself, I deserve rest, you are teaching your nervous system safety. When you tell yourself, I can try again, you are teaching your mind resilience. When you say, my story still matters, you are educating your soul about hope. Do this for just 3 days, not to become perfect, but to become kinder. Not to erase your struggles, but to stop bullying yourself for having them. And when those 3 days pass, you may realize something quietly powerful. You didn't change your life yet, but you changed the way you stand inside it. And that is where every real transformation begins. Before the world ever corrects you, before society labels you, before success or failure hands you a report card, you are already sitting in a classroom that never closes. And that classroom is your own mind. The way you speak to yourself is not casual, it is instructional. Every sentence you repeat inside becomes a lesson. Every thought becomes a rule. And slowly, without realizing it, you begin to live according to what you have been teaching yourself. If your inner voice is harsh, impatient, and unforgiving, then you are educating yourself in fear. If your inner voice is calm, honest, and encouraging, then you are educating yourself in growth. This is not philosophy, this is daily conditioning. Most people do not fail because they lack talent or opportunity. They fail because they have been poorly taught by their own thoughts. They wake up and mentally rehearse their weaknesses. They remind themselves of old mistakes. They repeat stories of why they cannot, why they should not, why it is too late. Imagine attending a class where the teacher constantly tells you that you are slow, incapable, and disappointing. You would never learn there. And yet, that is exactly how many people speak to themselves every single day, and then wonder why they feel stuck. If you want change, do not start with the world, start with the language you use in your head. When you say, I can't, your mind closes the book. When you say, I'm learning, your mind opens a page. The difference between those two sentences is not grammar, it is direction. One shuts down curiosity, the other invites effort. Advice that actually works is simple but uncomfortable. Talk to yourself as if you are responsible for educating a human life, because you are. When you fall short, do not scream at yourself, instruct yourself. Say what went wrong, say what can be done better, and then move forward. That is how real teachers operate. They correct without humiliation. They challenge without destroying confidence. If your inner voice only knows punishment and never guidance, you're not motivating yourself, you are traumatizing yourself. Your mind believes what it hears repeatedly. So if for years it has heard doubt, comparison, and self-blame, it will act accordingly. But the moment you begin to speak with intention, with awareness, with care, something shifts. You may not feel powerful immediately, but you will feel steadier. You will stop collapsing at every failure because your inner teacher will say, stay, observe, learn. Read this like advice you would give to someone you love. You are always listening to yourself, so choose your words like they matter, because they do. Teach yourself patience when results are slow. Teach yourself courage when fear appears. Teach yourself dignity when the world is unkind. This is not self-talk for motivation. This is self-talk for education. And education changes behavior long before it changes outcomes, before your actions ever reach the world. Your words reach your brain, and the brain treats those words as instructions, not opinions. Every sentence you repeat inside your mind becomes a signal, and your nervous system responds to that signal immediately. This is why words are never harmless, especially the ones you say to yourself. They do not float away, they settle in. They influence your posture, your energy, your decisions, and even the way your body handles stress. If you constantly speak in defeat, your brain prepares you for loss. If you speak in possibility, your brain prepares you to try. Your brain is designed to protect you, not to make you successful. It scans for danger, and language is one of the strongest triggers it responds to. When you tell yourself, I am not good enough, the brain hears threat. It releases tension, hesitation, fear. Your focus narrows, creativity drops, and suddenly even simple tasks feel heavy. But when you say this is difficult, but I can handle it, the brain receives a different command. It stays alert without panic. It looks for solutions instead of exits. This is not motivation talk. This is biology responding to language. Most people wait for confidence to change their words, but education teaches us the opposite order. Change the words and the brain will follow. You do not need to feel strong to speak strong. You need to speak strong so your brain can learn strength. Repetition is how the brain decides what is true. It does not ask whether a thought is fair or accurate, it asks whether it is familiar. That is why negative self-talk feels convincing, because it has been practiced for years. Advice that actually works is to become intentional with the sentences you repeat during pressure. When you are tired, notice what you say. When you fail, notice what you say. Those moments are shaping you more than your successes. If your language in hard moments is cruel, your brain associates effort with pain. If your language is steady and respectful, your brain associates effort with growth. You are literally training your brain every day, whether you are aware of it or not. Words shape expectation. Expectation shapes behavior, and behavior shapes results. This is how the inner world builds the outer one. Speak chaos, and your mind becomes chaotic. Speak clarity, and your mind begins to organize itself. Read this like advice, not inspiration. Stop arguing with your brain and start instructing it. Give it words that lead somewhere useful. Say what is true without being destructive. Say what is hopeful without lying. Over time, the brain adapts. It becomes calmer under pressure, braver in uncertainty, and more patient with progress. Not because life became easier, but because your words taught your brain how to stand inside difficulty. The way you speak to yourself in private is either medicine or poison, and most people do not realize they are overdosing on their own words. Self-talk is powerful because it reaches places no one else can reach. It enters you when you are tired, when you are scared, when you are alone, and in those moments it can either soothe the nervous system or attack it. There is no neutral language inside the mind. Every word either supports healing or deepens harm. When something goes wrong, notice how quickly the inner voice turns violent. You call yourself names you would never use for anyone you love. You replay mistakes as if punishment will somehow produce improvement. But cruelty has never educated anyone. It only creates fear, and fear does not make you better, it makes you smaller. If your self-talk is constantly harsh, your mind learns to associate effort with pain, and eventually it avoids effort altogether. Healing begins when you change the tone without denying the truth. You do not need to pretend everything is fine. You need to stop making it worse with your language. There is a difference between accountability and abuse. Accountability says, "This did not work, let's understand why." Abuse says, "You always fail, you are the problem." One teaches, the other wounds, and wounded minds struggle to grow. Your body listens too. When you speak to yourself with anger, your muscles tense, your breath shortens, your heart rate changes. Over time, this becomes a stress pattern. But when your self-talk is calm and grounded, even during difficulty, your body feels safer. Safety is not comfort, it is the absence of threat. And without that sense of safety, learning, creativity, and resilience shut down. Advice worth following is this: speak to yourself like someone who wants you to survive and improve, not like someone trying to break you into obedience. When you fail, say what happened without attacking who you are. When you feel weak, name the weakness without turning it into an identity. This is how self-talk becomes healing instead of harmful. The most dangerous belief is that being hard on yourself is necessary for success. In reality, people grow faster when they feel supported, even by themselves. Encouragement does not make you lazy, it makes you willing. Compassion does not remove discipline, it makes discipline sustainable. A mind that feels respected is more likely to try again. Read this like advice you would keep close. You are listening to yourself all the time, especially when no one else is there. Choose words that repair instead of words that reopen wounds. Choose guidance over judgment. Over time, this choice changes how you respond to pressure, how you recover from failure, and how safe it feels to be inside your own head. Change does not arrive in dramatic moments. It arrives through repetition, and the mind learns through patterns, not promises. That is why 3 days matter more than one emotional decision. Your beliefs were not built in a single day, they were built through repeated thoughts spoken again and again until they felt like truth. So when you commit to speaking differently to yourself for 3 days, you are not trying to transform your life. You are interrupting an old pattern long enough for the mind to notice something new. The brain is designed to adapt. It is constantly rewiring itself based on what it experiences most often. When you repeat the same inner dialogue, the brain strengthens that pathway, even if the dialogue is harmful. But when you deliberately introduce a new way of speaking, even briefly, the brain pauses and starts forming an alternative route. This is how belief patterns begin to shift. Not because you force positivity, but because you showed the brain another option. 3 days is short enough that resistance does not panic you, and long enough that consistency begins to work. On the first day, your old voice will argue back. It will say, "This feels fake, this feels uncomfortable, this is not you." That discomfort is not failure, it is evidence that you are stepping outside a familiar mental habit. Habits resist change, even unhealthy ones. Stay steady. On the second day, you may notice small changes. Your reactions slow down. You pause before attacking yourself. You choose words with a little more care. This is not weakness, this is awareness. Awareness is the beginning of control. You are no longer running on autopilot. You are participating in your own mental education. By the third day, something subtle but important happens. The new language starts to feel less forced. Your brain has heard it enough times to stop rejecting it completely. It may not believe it yet, but it recognizes it, and recognition is the first step toward acceptance. This is how rewiring begins, quietly, without applause. Read this like advice you would trust. Do not underestimate small consistency. Do not wait to feel different before you speak differently. The words come first, the feelings catch up later. Speak with intention when you wake up. Speak with patience when you mess up. Speak with steadiness when you feel overwhelmed. Those 3 days are not about perfection, they are about practice. Once you experience even a slight shift, you will realize that change is not as impossible as it once felt. It does not require becoming someone new, it requires treating your mind differently. And when the mind learns a new pattern, it never completely forgets it. Even if you slip back, you now know another way exists, and that knowledge alone weakens the old belief that nothing can change. Pain is not just something you feel, it is something that listens. It responds to how you treat yourself while you are hurting. When life presses hard, when disappointment settles in your chest, the words you choose in that moment either soften the impact or make it unbearable. Many people believe pain comes only from events, but a large part of suffering comes from the conversation that follows those events inside the mind. When something breaks inside you, your first instinct might be to attack yourself, to ask why you are like this, why you are so weak, why you cannot handle things better. But pain does not need interrogation, it needs understanding. When you speak harshly to yourself in pain, your nervous system tightens. It goes into defense mode. Healing slows down. You may look functional on the outside, but inside the wound stays open. Read this like advice you would give someone you care about. When you are in pain, lower your voice. Speak gently, not because you are fragile, but because gentleness helps you stay present. Say, "S hurts, and I am allowed to feel it." Say, "I am struggling, and that does not make me broken." These words do not remove pain, but they stop it from multiplying. Pain pays attention to tone. When your inner voice is calm, your body relaxes enough to process what is happening. Your breath deepens, your shoulders drop, your mind becomes less chaotic. This creates space for reflection instead of panic. But when your inner voice is cruel, pain sharpens. It becomes louder. It demands more attention because it feels unsafe. Most people think being strong means being silent with pain, but real strength is learning how to speak to yourself during it. Silence without compassion becomes suppression, and suppressed pain finds its way out in other forms. Speaking kindly is not indulgence, it is regulation. It tells your system that you are not in danger from yourself. The advice that changes lives is simple but difficult. Do not abandon yourself in moments of pain. Stay with yourself. Speak as if you are sitting beside someone who is hurting. Offer presence, not solutions. Pain does not want fixing first, it wants acknowledgement. Once it feels seen, it begins to soften. Your pain has memory. It remembers how you treated yourself during past struggles. If you always responded with criticism, pain learned to hide or explode. But when you respond with respect and patience, pain learns it is safe to move through you instead of getting stuck. Over time, this changes your relationship with suffering. You stop fearing it as much because you trust yourself to handle it with care. Let this advice stay with you. You cannot control when pain arrives, but you can control how you speak to yourself when it does. And that choice decides whether pain becomes a teacher or a lifelong burden. Self-respect is not something you demand from the world. It is something you demonstrate to yourself long before anyone else notices. It begins quietly, in the way you speak to yourself when no one is listening, when there is no applause, no validation, no one to correct the tone. The way you address yourself becomes the standard you accept from others. If your inner voice is dismissive, rushed, or cruel, you subconsciously teach the world that this is how you can be treated. Most people look for self-respect in confidence, posture, or boundaries, but it actually starts much earlier, in conversation. When you constantly interrupt yourself with doubt, when you belittle your own efforts, when you ignore your emotional signals, you are practicing self-disrespect. And practice always becomes habit. The mind learns from repetition, not intention. Read this like advice you need to hear. Talk to yourself with dignity even when you are disappointed in yourself. Dignity does not mean avoiding accountability. It means correcting without humiliation. You can say, "This was not your best," without saying, "You are a failure." One builds character, the other erodes it. Self-respect grows when you hold yourself responsible without tearing yourself down. The way you speak to yourself also determines how safe it feels to try. A mind that expects insult after every mistake learns to stay small. It avoids risk, avoids growth, avoids honesty. But when your inner dialogue is firm and fair, you create an environment where effort feels worth it. Respect creates courage. When you trust that you will not betray yourself with cruelty, you dare more. Self-respect is also about consistency. You cannot speak to yourself with kindness one day and violence the next and expect stability. This is not about being soft. It is about being reliable. Reliable in your values. Reliable in how you treat your own mind. Reliability builds self-trust, and self-trust is the backbone of self-respect. Advice that actually changes behavior is this: listen to the tone you use with yourself during stress. That tone reveals how much you respect your own humanity. When you are overwhelmed, do you rush yourself, shame yourself, or threaten yourself with consequences? Or do you slow down, prioritize clarity, and choose words that keep you grounded? This choice is not small. It shapes your identity over time. Speaking to yourself with respect rewires how you carry yourself in the world. You stop seeking approval desperately because you are no longer starving for it internally. You stop tolerating disrespect because it no longer matches your inner standard. And without announcing it, without forcing it, your presence changes. People respond to the way you treat yourself because that energy is always communicating.